Okay. Let's see where we're for. All right. Cool. Not as smooth as an introduction as I would have wanted, but I think we'll be okay. Welcome, everyone. This is Andres Restart. Brandon will be showing up shortly. He got caught up at the gym and apparently is stuck in the sauna, but he'll be here soon. We're going to do some Q&A to start the show, but for those who are new here, we talk about Nintendo every day on the channel, but every Monday night we do the live stream podcast where we go over certain topics that may be relevant for the time that we would be having the podcast, and also a fair bit of Q&A as well. And that's actually how we're going to start things. We're going to do a little bit of Q&A while I wait for Brandon to show up, and then we'll be going into our impressions of Super Mario RPG. The game just came out. The remake just came out because it's actually been out for a very long time, the original. But we're going to be talking about that game, how much we're enjoying it or not enjoying it. I'm enjoying it, just for the record. It's pretty good, so I'm excited to talk about it. But also, I felt like it would be a fun little topic to just kind of debate if Switch 2 is coming out in 2024. Like, not just talk about, oh, there's this rumor here or there's this piece of evidence, but like Brand will pick a side, I'll pick a side, and we're just going to kind of debate which one makes the most sense. I think the majority of people here, because what I usually talk about, are probably on Team 2024, but we're going to try and, debate both sides and consider other possibilities. So with that all said, I do want to check in with the chat here. There were some interesting things brought up. But before I do, guys, if you could let me know how everything looks and sounds, that'd be very much appreciated. Let me know now while the show is still early on. So if there's anything I can fix, I'll fix it now. And like the stream, because that'd be very helpful for the show. It'll get more people to watch the show, and, well, that would make me happy. So I'd very much appreciate that. But checking with the chat here, Retro Cheats, right from the get-go, asked, anyone going to talk about the possibility of a Switch Pro in 2024 instead of a Switch 2? I think that's an interesting question to ask, actually. Okay. All right, Brandon. All right, Brandon is going to be here in 30 minutes to an hour, so that is longer than expected, but that's fine. We'll make it work. Anyway, I probably will. I'll do the Q&A. I'll talk about Mario RPG, my impressions of it, and then Brandon will probably, when Brandon shows up, we'll do the debate. I think that's probably going to be the best way to go about it. I'm going to assume I haven't even asked him. I'm assuming he hasn't actually picked up the game. I was going to have him ask me about Mario RPG, but I'm just going to talk about it, and then we'll just talk about it here, so it'll be fine. Anyway, to Retro Treat's question, I know I'm going to talk about the possibility of Switch Pro in 2024 instead of a Switch 2. I think this is an interesting question to consider. In truth, I haven't really thought about it too much, because I don't think it's going to happen. But let's try and like consider this possibility. And if there's some point I'm missing or there's something I haven't considered, please put it in the chat below, because I haven't really fully assessed this possibility. So I'm sure there's gonna be some good points that I haven't considered yet. So I'll be checking in the chat. We'll revisit this topic. But just like my surface level thoughts, a Switch Pro, I guess, like, what would be the advantage of doing that this late into the generation? Because Switch came out March 2017. So just go over the numbers there. March 2018, that's the year. March 2019, March 2020, March 2021, March 2022, March 2023, and then come March 2024, that will be the 7 full years of Switch having been out on the market. Did I do that right? Yeah, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Right. So we're the Switch has been out for more than 6.5 years at this point. And we're getting close to the 7-year anniversary, which would mean, and this is where it gets confusing because you might see I've read different articles, we would be entering its 8th year. There hasn't been a Nintendo platform that has been the primary platform for this long, or will be. The only one that I think really compares is the NES. So let's see, the Nintendo Entertainment System came out. I want to double check the release date because the thing is, there's two different versions. There's the Famicom, and then there's the localized Nintendo Entertainment System. So let me just double check this. Right, so the NES came out in 1985. I want to say the Famicom came out in 1983. But the SNES came out 1990. So if we... And that's the Super Famicom release, right? Because at the time, Nintendo released in Japan first, and they would come to other areas afterwards. So if we just talk about the Famicom, which is the Japanese version, right? Its initial, the first Famicom came out. I'm gonna just double check this. I'm fairly certain, but I just want to double check. Right. So the first Famicom, the first NES, right, came out July 15, 1983, and the Super Famicom came out November 21st, 1990. So let's do the math there. All right, July 84. July 85, July 86, July 87, July 88, July 89, July 90. So then the Famicom, the original Famicom, was Nintendo's primary platform for 7.5 years. And right now, where we are with a Switch, we're past 6.5. So we're less than a year away from Switch pushing past that, the longest running Nintendo platform. And Switch 2 hasn't been announced yet. So in terms of that timing, it would just be very odd if Nintendo were to announce a Switch Pro now, because that would guarantee that the Switch would be the longest running platform ever. Although I guess you could argue the Game Boy Color, right? Like, so that there's some debate to be had there, because the Game Boy's life got lengthened by the Game Boy Color. When was the initial Game Boy release? I also feel like calling the Game Boy Color the Game Boy feels like a little bit like a cop-up. But Game Boy came out in 1989, and then Game Boy Advance came out, 2001? So you could argue that that's the longest generation ever, but Game Boy Color feels a little cheap. But of course, maybe that's the argument that some people want to make here, that a Switch Pro would be like the Game Boy Color to the Game Boy. But that was a long time ago. And the Game Boy Color had exclusive games. Every game looks substantially better. And Nintendo was so dominant in the mobile market, there wasn't really any need to change immediately. It was a very different ecosystem at the time. That said, with how dominant Nintendo has been, is there an argument to be made that maybe they could do something similar? I mean, if they did, they would have to make the Switch Pro like... I mean, it would have to effectively be like a next generation Switch. Like, I kind of think that what some people might consider a Switch Pro and what some people might consider a Switch 2, the lines could be very blurry. Because what do I expect from Switch 2? I expect that it's going to have better hardware. I expect that games are going to look and run a lot better on this system, but I also think it's going to be backwards compatible, and older games running on the system may look and play better. So if you look at it from that perspective, a Switch Pro might do something similar, right? Like, we look at the Game Boy Color. Game Boy Color, it had exclusive games that looked better than the prior version, but it was still backwards compatible, and older games looked better as well. So it's a weird kind of situation there. But I don't really think that that's kind of the direction we're headed in. And I think the main reason for that is, if you're going to do a Pro, the implication is that there wouldn't really be exclusive games, right? So like a Game Boy Color is kind of like a pseudo next generation because it had exclusive games. New 3DS had exclusive games too, actually, but that didn't go over well back then with the new 3DS. It had some exclusive games and they didn't sell well, so Nintendo stopped doing that. But you look at Xbox One X, PS4 Pro, the current gen examples of the Pro version, right? That mid-gen refresh, they didn't do exclusives. They just had the whole checkerboard thing. Games look and ran better. If there are no exclusive games, if Nintendo's not going to do that, there's an issue. Like, there's an issue on both sides. Like, if Nintendo does exclusive games, but it's not a full generational leap, then a lot of people aren't going to adopt, and they're not going to buy the games on the newer platform. That was the issue with it, part of the issue with the new 3DS and the exclusivity there. But if they do it the other way, right, where losing my train of thought here. So new 3DS, right? It had the exclusivity problem, but if they do it the other way, where it's like a Switch Pro, like a PlayStation 4 Pro, then you're going to run into the issue where third parties, like, or just not just third parties, but even Nintendo development, like, they're going to be hamstrung by, like, they're going to be held back by the base model of the platform, and technology development of the games are going to be held back in that way, and they will not be able to move forward. So I'm not saying a Switch Pro wouldn't have made sense. I just think we're well past that point already. Last week I put out a video talking about Nintendo's financials and how it actually means Switch 2 is more likely coming next year. And one graphic I put up was the sales of third-party games. And what it showed over the last 3 fiscal years is that they've reached like a really nice high. But over the last fiscal year, there was a 20 million in sales drop, which is a substantial drop. It's still really good, but it's a substantial drop. And what that's signifying is that third-party sales are starting to die down. You look at games like the recent Mortal Kombat. You look at games like Hogwarts Legacy, and how long it took Hogwarts Legacy to come out on Switch, and how bad it looks. Like, I have no interest in playing Hogwarts Legacy on Switch. I kind of was interested until I saw it, and I mean, I had my suspicions. And basically, I just don't think that it makes the most sense to do a Switch Pro, because not only do third parties need to move forward, they need to establish themselves on a new platform where their sales can pick up again. But Nintendo also needs to move forward as well. There's a lot of things that people have kind of remarked upon on Switch that leave something to be desired. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people who've played Tears of the Kingdom, because Tears of the Kingdom brings in a larger audience, right? It's beyond the typical Nintendo faithful. A lot of people that'll play Nintendo sometimes, but not all the time. And these are the kind of people that are going to be playing games on other platforms, on PC and the next-gen consoles, or current-gen consoles now. And a common remark about Tears of the Kingdom is like, why is it running at 60 frames per second? Why is the resolution so low? Why is it choppy? And if you only play on Switch, you'll probably think it's totally fine. If you're more of a casual gamer, you'll probably think it's fine. But there is a significant amount of people that do see the technical limitations of the Switch, and it holds back even Nintendo's premier title that is Tears of the Kingdom. So while Nintendo did an amazing job pushing the Switch hardware with Tears of the Kingdom, they accomplished incredible things. There's a huge technical marvel, everything they accomplished in that game, but it's still held back by the Switch. Like, Nintendo does have to move forward. And when we're talking about Switch being this late into the generation, if you do, could we maybe get away with having another year where we don't get Switch 2? Maybe, right? But this idea of a Switch Pro, that would be suggesting that we're going to wait at least another 3 years. And I don't think we can do that. That's where I think the issue is. So maybe you can make the argument, well, the Pro version, maybe Tears of the Kingdom would run at 4K or 60 FPS or what have you. So, I mean, there's debates to be had here, but I think we're at a point where it's just time to do a next generation, and maybe Nintendo wants to do more than just a power leap. because we are seeing Nintendo has reached this point for a while already, market saturation. So what that means is they can still sell to new people, and they do. Like I have some friends that have bought a Switch recently. I know some people that still want to get a Switch, but the majority of people that are going to get a Switch have bought a Switch. Like those ratios are dropping significantly. And even though Nintendo had record sales with both Tears of the Kingdom and the Mario Bros. Movie, the sales are better than expected, which is why the first half of the year is so good. They still didn't move up their hardware projections, even though those things sold better. It's because we're at a point now where people are kind of know what the Switch is. They might get some of the special editions. Some people will pick it up, and the Switch will continue to sell. But it's a downward trajectory, and just a power leap is probably not going to sustain it for that much longer in a healthy way. Nintendo needs to come up with a new system that offers a power leap, but there's going to have to be something else about it that's going to reignite the audience and perhaps give Nintendo an opportunity to perhaps even take a stab at reaching an even larger audience. So ultimately, I don't think Switch Pro makes the most sense. But you never really know, right? So, and I do think the way Nintendo may market Switch 2, some people may look at it as a Switch Pro because Nintendo may market Switch 2 as kind of like a premier system at first, because there's going to be backwards compatibility. There's going to be a lot of cross-gen games maybe at first. And so the way it may be, not everyone's going to feel compelled to buy a Switch 2 year one or even year two. But by year three, Nintendo's going to have the Switch have winded down significantly. And that's where Nintendo's probably going to start pushing Switch 2 as a primary system moving forward. I mean, it is going to be primary system, but it's going to be like the primary breadwinner, and Switch will be pretty much almost non-existent in terms of sales by year 3 of Switch 2. Anyway, those are kind of my thoughts on it, but I'm sure there's other perspectives, so if I see them, I'll come back to it. All right. Harry Myers, Andres Vistarto, thank you. Sammy Talks About Games, hello there. Let's see here, actually, Sammy Talks About Games has renewed the membership for 10 straight months. Thank you, buddy. It's always been great having you around. Samuel says, keep doing what you do. Do you think there's any chance Switch 2 gets delayed beyond 2024? I don't think so, really, but maybe. Well, you never know. You never know for sure. Delays happen all the time. That all said, we're going to get into this in the debate later, probably, but I just feel like there's a lot of signs pointing towards Switch 2 being a next year thing. I think if Nintendo does delay to 2025, it would be a bad thing for them. And when I say a bad thing, I don't mean like all doom and gloom. Nintendo's not going to perform well, and like it's they're going to fail. Like I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that it's going to impact them. Their financials are not going to be good next year if they don't come out with Switch 2. That's what I'm saying. Because like Nintendo's done everything they can to push Switch sales this year. They've had the Mario Bros. Movie, they've had Tears of the Kingdom, they've had Mario Wonder, they've done more bundles and special editions than they ever have. And despite all that, their hardware projections are still projected to be a third decline in a row. So to go into next year where they're likely going to see another decline, that's not good. And next year there is no Tears of the Kingdom, the big Zelda game that we've been waiting since 2019 for, and the Mario Bros. Movie. Like they don't have things like that we've been anticipating for years. Nothing that has that kind of sales potential. You look at Mario Bros. Wonder. Mario Bros. Wonder did amazing. People will point Mario Bros. Wonder and be like, hey, that's like a sign of still big Nintendo titles coming. Yes. But you look at Mario Wonder, and in 10 days it sold like in 2 weeks it sold about like 4.5 million, about something like that. And that's pretty damn good. That's historic success. But that doesn't compare to the 10 million that Tears of the Kingdom sold in its first weekend. There's a dramatic difference there. So Nintendo could have something maybe close to the next 2D Mario, which historically is one of their best-selling franchises ever. I'm not sure what that would be. Maybe another Pokemon game, I'm sure, but like it's going to be a losing effort. So yes, they'll be okay, but they won't be great. And Nintendo wants to be great. They're a business. They're in it to win it. So I think it makes the most sense to come out with Switch 2 next year, just from a financial perspective. But of course, if something happens in the supply chain or what have you, I don't know. Then yeah, if there's another pandemic like that, or there's like a some sort of shortage of chips, then it could get pushed to 2025. I hope that doesn't happen. I don't think it will, but it is possible. Taker610 with a super chat. Thank you for the super chat, buddy. To me, Pro implies no new exclusive games and minimal performance enhancements. Next gen implies exclusive games. No doubt it has to be next gen. Yeah. I would say based off what we've seen of the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X, like that I agree with, right? Like if we're talking about a more powerful revision that has exclusive titles, like what really is the difference here? But I also think that they need to come at it from a branding perspective where it's clear that this is something new, because it has more sales potential in that regard. And if it also gives them an opportunity to include some new tech beyond just better graphics, that can really, push them to another level. Not to mention the Pro. There is the other issue of a Pro. It's an enhancement of the Switch, but what we're hearing about Switch 2 is something more of a dramatic leap, which is going to lead to far better performing games and them doing even more spectacular things in those games. So it's not just about higher resolution, better frame rate. When you have more power, when you have newer tech in there, better things can be accomplished from a gameplay perspective. Like Breath of the Wild wasn't possible on the Wii. No matter how amazing Nintendo could have been, no matter how much wizardry they could have used, they never could have made anything like Breath of the Wild on any prior console before the Wii U. And even on the Wii U, it was a pretty much a miracle that they were able to accomplish that on the Wii U. So I think next gen needs to happen. I mean, we're at that point. It's a matter of, is it this year? Maybe it's next year. I know some people will say 2026, but everyone has opinions. All right, looking through the chat here. Hello there, Sky Swords Alyssa. Hello there, Having Hope. Thank you for letting me know everything looks and sounds great. I appreciate that. Mr. Dwayne 191. Hey, Andres, been playing both Mario RPG and Persona 5 Tactics, and I'm enjoying it so far. Nice. I've been playing Mario RPG as well. I will talk about that in a bit. I'm enjoying it a lot. It's very good. Connor, hello there. So for completing the game 100%, do you have to beat the game with one file and beat the entire game with all 3 files? No. I would consider, like, is the game different when you beat it with each file? I would say no. From what I've heard, at least, or haven't heard. So I would say no. If you beat 100% of the game in one file, you're good. If you 100% the game in other files, you're crazy. I'm not saying that in a bad way. Just that would require extreme dedication. 100%ing a game already requires great dedication. But to do it 3 times over and each individual file, that's beyond dedication. Hello there, Super Chris. Hello there, Joey CJ. Hello there, Captain Doge. Johnny Hernandez. We need new hardware. No excuse, Nintendo. The Switch came out March 2017, so they could not keep selling the same Switch in 2024, or else people will buy a OLED Steam Deck. Some people will. I don't know how much the Steam Deck is going to really impact Nintendo. I think Nintendo is competing against themselves more so than anything else. Like, every company is competing for the dollar, for the dollar of the consumer. I feel like Nintendo's real competition, like, yes, they compete with Steam Deck. Yes, they compete with Sony. Yes, they compete with Microsoft. Yeah, the answer is yes to all of that. But the point I want to make is that I think Nintendo's kind of competing against literally everything that you pay money for. Like, it's that simple. Um, so what do I mean? Well, for example, I went to Dunkin' Donuts this morning. I got Checkers for dinner. No, that's not healthy. Um, but it's convenient and it tastes good. And that costs more than it probably should. And maybe if I maybe I rather spend my extra money on convenient good tasting food when I'm too lazy to cook or get healthy food, as opposed to saving it up to buy a Switch OLED, because I don't need a Switch OLED. I'm happy with my Switch. And that's the point I'm making here, that there's going to be a lot of scenarios somewhat like that. Maybe not maybe aren't all everyone's wasting their money on fast food, but do use their money on something. And so I agree that Nintendo does need to do something, because the numbers show that sales are stagnating. There's going to be blips, right? There are times, like for example, Japan, the Switch has sold pretty well for a few different weeks and months. But overall, like, what's the picture going to say year over year? And currently projections are as expected, which is a third decline in a row. So like sometimes people will see like one good month or one good week and be like, see, like the Switch isn't dying, but it's not the Switch. I mean, the Switch is dying, but slowly. It's living a very long, healthy life. But you can't look at sales for one small piece of time and think that that's telling the whole picture. The whole picture so far is a third year in decline as expected. And that only then at that point, it's a pattern, it's a trend. And that suggests a fourth year of decline, especially when we don't really have any evidence to think that next year Nintendo is something that's even bigger, that they can push on just Switch. So, yeah, I agree they need new hardware, but not necessarily because of the OLED Steam Deck. Orlando Mota, hello there. Where's Brandon? Um, 26 minutes ago, he was at Wendy's. He told me he'll be here within 30 minutes to an hour, half an hour ago. So he should be popping in any minute. We're popping in around 9. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to be doing Q&A. And then after the Q&A, I mean, we could do Q&A the entire time, to be totally frank. So we'll see how things go. But if I get to it, I'll talk about Super Mario RPG on my own. And then when Brandon comes in, we'll do our Switch 2 debate. Netweed. Hey, all Chozos, Mallows, and Constructs. There you go. All of them. Don't forget Nopon. We got Nopons in here as well. Johnny Hernandez. If Nintendo drops the ball, Switch 2, it's over for Nintendo. I don't know if it's over. That Nintendo's is running at an all-time high now. It's not over. But also, Nintendo really focuses their efforts on focusing their efforts on one platform nowadays. So with that, their stakes are a bit higher. But because they're focusing their efforts on one platform, they're less likely to fail. I guarantee you, like, if you think about it, you look at every generation, Nintendo's always had a successful platform. It just hasn't always been the home consoles. They've tried to have 2 successful platforms per generation. That's where they're kind of spreading themselves too thin. Like, you look at the 3DS Wii U, it got to a point where the Wii U got less and less titles, and the 3DS had a lot more focus, and the 3DS did pretty well despite its really rocky start. And now Nintendo's focused everything on one platform. It's very hard for them to fail. Will they be as successful as Switch? That remains to be seen, but they're not going to fail. I mean, unless that's what you define as failure. But like, are they done for? Or are they going to go out of business? And it's extremely unlikely. Jay, I'm getting some buffering. I apologize. Everything looks good on my end. Excellent connection, it says. Well, if it says it's excellent. Sometimes you just gotta refresh. And sometimes the internet just hates me or somebody. Could be you. Hope not. Captain Doge. I really hope the next gen Nintendo system finally gives us true gaming parity between all systems when it comes to third-party games. Yeah, like from what we've heard, I'm very excited about what's been suggested, like Monster Hunter, the next Monster Hunter game is rumored for Switch 2, and I'm excited for that. Like, I think that could be fantastic. Like we've recently heard about, this is the news, right? This is not speculation. We know that Call of Duty is coming to Nintendo's next platform. We know that, and I actually do like Call of Duty. I don't get every single one, but I've always been a fan of zombies. I've really hyped up Black Ops 2, which I played a lot back on Wii U when it launched. And that's an old game at this point, but it's a good game. I would like to see that series come back to Nintendo. I've been putting off Elden Ring for the longest. I may buy a PS5 soon, and that's maybe where I play it. But man, I would so much prefer to play that on the Switch 2 if it can run that better than what it plays on PS4, which from everything we've heard it would. So that would be exciting. Yeah, like for sure Monster Hunter. Like I bet you, outside of maybe PC, because PC has like boundless potential. But actually, I got double check the sales on that. But just comparing, like, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, Monster Hunter is probably gonna sell better on the Switch. Oh yeah, especially if it looks and runs comparably to the other versions. No doubt. Switch 2, I'm talking about here. Also, Monster Hunter Rise. That's one of my favorite games of this generation. It's incredible. That was a Switch timed exclusive. It was built for the Switch and they ported to PC like a year or so later. Let's see, where are we? Okay. Captain Doge, with Switch 2 comes great responsibility, doesn't it? Joy CJ, 2024 makes business sense. I agree. Let's see here. NetWeed09, sorry I had chat scroll down. It was listing some really good points raised. I feel a Reswitch Pro it's even simpler, that Nintendo would never release a console simply on power alone. Yeah, I mean, the Switch Pro would just be more powerful version, and that's probably not enough. And we already got the Switch OLED, which kind of does a lot of the nice little things that you can do for Switch. So a Pro might even be a little redundant if you look at it in that way. Of course, you look at Nintendo with a 3DS. Not a lot of versions. So maybe they come out with like a light OLED. I could see that, but that could come out. The light OLED could come out after Switch 2 comes out. The same way they announced a new 2DS XL after Switch came out. Something similar could happen. All right, we're looking through. Having Hope 5. I wanted to see how beautiful Xenoblade Chronicles X will look on Switch 2 with a remake or a remaster. Yeah, I mean, I think they could make it look great. Like I can imagine Xenoblade X on Switch 2 running at 4K 60 FPS with ray tracing, and it would look amazing. They scale up the textures. Like, they wouldn't have to do anything dramatic. Like, those things would be dramatic, but like, they wouldn't have to add in like a lot of new assets beyond just cleaning up the textures and stuff, and obviously the lighting stuff. But that would be neat. And if they were to add like an epilogue story to kind of answer to that cliffhanger at the end, that would be perfect. I would love that. But I think what we're gonna do now. Let's see, Brandon's probably close. He's probably close-ish. What I'm gonna do now is I'm going to start talking about Super Mario RPG, and then we'll talk about that for a little bit. And by that point, I bet Brandon will be almost here. If not, we could just do more Q&A. Oh, this is interesting. NetWeed. One massive game that gets very overlooked is Dragon's Dogma. Yes, it's on Switch, believe it or not. And get this, the sequel releases next year, prime time for a port soon. Switch 2 version would be nice. We're going to get a GTA 6 trailer apparently soon, too. Imagine if Grand Theft Auto 6 comes to Switch 2. That'd be crazy. And I think it's possible. Like, from everything we've heard, it seems like Switch 2 is finally going to have the third-party support we've kind of been like hoping it's going to get for a long time. Anyway, let's talk about Super Mario RPG. So, I have been playing the game this weekend. I think on, what was it, Thursday, I did the Q&A, and you guys were asking me if I was going to pick up Mario RPG, and I said I probably would. I was always going to. I've been using the Nintendo voucher program. So I had gotten the voucher program, the most recent one, with Mario Wonder and Mario RPG in mind. Before that, it was Tears of the Kingdom and Pikmin 4. So I wonder what my next pair will be. There may not be another pair. Because I am not wasting that money on Mario vs. Donkey Kong. It makes no sense if that's even available. Anyways, yeah, I did pick up Mario RPG, or rather, I downloaded it with the voucher program. But I didn't. I downloaded it Friday or Thursday night. Actually, I think after the live stream, I went to play a little bit of Mario Wonder and I put it to download. But I didn't start playing it until Saturday because I said during this, like I said on Thursday, I wanted to 100% Mario Wonder first, and I did, and it was fantastic. I had a very good time with Mario Wonder, really good. The last level. I'm not talking about fighting Bowser. I'm talking about when you collect everything, when you do everything, it's like, hey, there's one more thing that you can do now. Once you do everything, I did that. And that took me about I don't want to say it took me the whole day, right? Maybe a couple hours, if we're talking about like actual gameplay time. But I lost about 40 lives or something like that, or maybe more. I lost a lot. I had to get the 99 one-up mushroom at least once. And I didn't waste the whole thing, but I had like 10 lives and then for 15, and then went in and I ran out of them. And so just to explain, like I wasted more than 15 lives before I had to start over, because as you go, you're collecting coins, and you're getting some one-ups as you progress, right? So that 15 ended up being more like, I don't know, 20-ish or something, or 25. But I wasted a lot of lives. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure I died more than 50 times. On the last level. But when you're doing it for so long, what kind of happens is you, at least for me, there's a certain point where you kind of lose focus. You start playing worse. Like there are several sections you have to get through, and at first you're getting through the first couple sections consistently, but after a certain point you start dying a lot in that first section because you're just not focused anymore. A lot of that happened, right? So sometimes I had to take breaks, or I had to reposition my focus, recenter myself. But I got that done, and it was a pretty satisfying end. But anyways, on to actually Mario RPG. I gotta double check how much time I put in. I think maybe I've put in close to 2 hours, about that. So not an extraordinary amount, but enough to give you my early impressions. And I haven't read any reviews. I haven't listened to any reviews. I haven't watched the Digital Foundry on this game. I know the Metacritic scores are good. Actually, I was looking here. 83 on Metacritic, which is pretty good for what this is. And for those that are wondering when I say what this is, I'm just saying it's not the kind of game you would expect to have extremely high reviews. Like it's a remake of a Super Nintendo game, is my point. It's not a brand new Legend of Zelda game. Like there's a difference in scope there, and there does tend to be a correlation with review scores for those kinds of things. But an 83 on Metacritic is very, very good. That takes account and for the outliers that can drag your score down. So an 83, I think that speaks volumes for the quality of the game. A very good game. And playing through, I can see why it's been getting those kinds of reviews. I don't know if it's my Switch. I haven't heard anyone complain about this, but again, as I said, I haven't been reading a lot of reviews or anything like that. But I have noticed a lot of frame rate problems. I will say that yesterday I turned on my Switch, and it was all red and black. And then I had to turn it off, turn it on back, and it was fine. My Switch has been slowly dying for a very long time. but it keeps not dying. So I'm like, all right, I guess it's fine. Like its health goes up and down every month, but for the most part, it's been doing me well. And I just reset it and it was fine. But yeah, like I was playing the game and I have noticed there are frame drops, which is a very, very, very minutely irritating. Not extremely, but it is a little bit. And I kind of most want to bring it up because when I kind of look at the remade visuals, they're drawing me in. The music's drawing me in. I love kind of exploring this world. One of the exciting things to me about Mario RPG is, or just the kind of the RPG Mario games, is that it kind of shows a different perspective of the Mario world. It shows a more expansive Mario world, that makes sense, because you can actually explore beyond just, the Mushroom Kingdom, the typical Mushroom Kingdom. You see the other towns, you see other characters, you get more well acquainted, and it feels like a proper adventure where you can really throw yourself in and get immersed. And I'm feeling that with Mario RPG, which was the initial one, and seeing the remade visuals, and like you go into the Mushroom Kingdom, the town, the small village. You see the houses and how well made they are. It looks really good. And then just kind of talking to the characters and seeing the personalities they have, and just kind of seeing the suggestions for what their day-to-day lives would be like. Like there is an attention to detail here that I really appreciate. I want to go back. I have played the original Mario RPG, but I didn't finish it. I want to go back and kind of compare them one to one because I feel like there's a lot of new elements, but it might just because it's just not very fresh in my mind. But it's actually been very immersive for me outside of the frame rate problems. I think visually the game, for the most part, is pretty stunning. There are some moments where I notice a little bit of pixelization or jagginess. It's subtle. It's not rampant. Overall, though, it's beautiful. And it's really helping to bring me in. I think it's one of those examples of where visuals can really make a big difference. And I think it makes a big difference for this game. Seeing Mario's animations when he's telling his little stories through the different NPCs of the world, it's really cool. Now, one criticism, an additional one I'll kind of put out. I love the CGI cutscenes. I think they look really great. But I kind of wish they went with voice acting. I would have really liked to have seen it. I don't even think they have Mario talk either, so they wouldn't have had to tackle the Mario talking in a video game problem. It's just the other characters. Like they have dialogue. It's not like a lot. I would have liked to have gotten some actual dialogue there, because when I hear them speaking mutely, it's a little off-putting to me. Otherwise, though, I'm really enjoying the experience. The gameplay is great. I love the gauge system now. I feel like that's definitely something new. I know they changed some subtle things there, so I got to kind of go back and check because it's been a little bit. But I've had a really good time with the game so far. I'm excited about this, and it just kind of gets me excited about kind of like Nintendo remakes in general. I think that when we kind of like talk about like the Nintendo remake, the concept of that, we go back a while back, like before the Switch generation. The idea of the Nintendo remake was like, oh well, they're not going to really remake it. They're just going to kind of do the bare minimum. Because the most popular examples are Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. And like, yes, Wind Waker HD is an amazing game, but that's because the Wind Waker is an amazing game, and I think they did a great job of remastering the visuals. But it was also a very smart choice because they didn't have to do that much to make it look extra amazing, because it already looked pretty great. And the Tingle bottles with me in the Miiverse integration were really cool. But otherwise, like Wind Waker didn't have a lot of substantial changes. It was a very minimalist remaster. And at the time, we called them remakes. Like our standards and definition for what a remaster and a remake have changed over the years. But anyway, I just kind of say that because you kind of look at Nintendo now, and like, we have these different things. We have the remastered, we have the definitive editions, we have the deluxes, and we have just the game where they don't even state what it is, which is typically what a remake is from Nintendo. And they've really raised the expectation here, I would say, usually. And I just kind of think about, man, what they did with Mario RPG. If they were to kind of give, let's say, maybe Ocarina of Time a similar level of effort, or at least on the same ratio. Like, imagine they take Ocarina of Time and they remake it that has, from a graphics perspective, something comparable to maybe Metroid Prime Remastered, which is the best looking game on Switch, according to many people, including myself. And they also add a couple subtle gameplay changes to mix up the combat a little bit more. They include everything that we saw in the 3DS version, which had a harder mode with the Master Quest. Maybe they reduce the load time, so like walking between areas is seamless, and they kind of redesign a little bit so it feels a little bit more open, a little bit larger, but ultimately it's the same game. That would be a really nice experience. That would be amazing, and it wouldn't be something that they would need the primary Zelda team to do. And that it would really draw me in, especially if they could. I mean, obviously, I want a little bit more. If they could add a few extra side quests or something, maybe an extra dungeon. Like, obviously, I always want more, right? But that's just like something they could do, right? And then we know that we don't. I say we know. We've heard about the Fire Emblem Genealogy War remake, and we've heard about the whatchamacallit, the F-Zero GX remaster. I have high expectations for those. I think those are going to be fantastic. We look at Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. That's a remake. And I'm very excited for Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. I might find myself enjoying Thousand Year Door even more in Super Mario RPG. And I'm loving Mario RPG so far. It's fantastic. It's really good. But anyways, yeah. My early impressions of Mario RPG, for the most part, they're amazing. I just wish there was some dialogue, and I wish there was a little bit less of a frame rate problem. I mean, the frame rate problem is subtle, but, I'm nitpicking. But let's see what you guys make of what I had to say, or what you guys currently have felt about it. Let's see here. Looking through. Oh. Chrono Rig has renewed their membership, have been a member for 13 straight months. Thank you for sticking around, Chrono Rig. I really appreciate it. Let's see here. When did the... Okay, I'm checking the timeline. Stefan, you've seen other reviewers note the frame rate problems. Okay, so it's not just me. Okay. Good to know that that this is not another sign of my Switch dying. Netweed, I mean, if I'm liking a turn-based game, it has to be a classic. It's interesting. I really enjoy Mario RPG. Like, it's turn-based combat, but when you account for the button presses, where you're always constantly trying to time when you're supposed to press it, right? It keeps you involved, keeps you active, and I think that's a really nice innovation that the Mario RPG series sort of introduced. Then it's a staple now for the Paper Mario games. But Mario RPG was the first time we saw it, and it's really nice having that. And again, with that whole gauge meter thing, which I'm pretty sure is a new thing, we gotta double check that, but it adds another layer there that keeps you doing it more, keeps you caring more about pressing A at the right moments throughout combat, which it's pretty nice. And Pokemon's timeless. Like, Pokemon combat is one of the best things about the games. Connor, so what do you think about the Forest Maze theme remake? And also, have you seen the lyrics of the Forest Maze theme from Christopher Niosi? His animations for it are pretty good. I have not seen that, but I will tell you, the music I've heard so far, like, I'm not even, have I been into the Forest remake so far? I've gone past the sewers. And so, I've gotten the music from, the two different castles, the sewers, the outside, the waterfall. Yeah, the waterfall is the last thing I did. All of it's great. I really enjoy it. I'll say that sometimes I try and use some old Mario RPG music in some of my videos. I haven't done it recently, and some of it's like a little. I don't want to say it's like bad, but maybe it's not. Some of it's a little. I'm trying to think of the right word. Let's say you just have to be in the right mood for. But with what I've heard so far, it seems to kind of fit. It's been kind of tuned in a way where it's a bit pleasant to the ears more often, if that makes any sense. And so I'm really enjoying that part of it so far. Let's see here. No, we don't. Mario RPG soothes the pain of Hogwarts Legacy. I just not even gonna. I saw the trailer. I was like, yeah, this is fugly. Some people think it looks fine. I mean, to each their own, but not for me. Yeah, part of the problem is when I see the better looking versions, I'm like, oh, but there's a much better looking version out there. Charles Chadell. I know you were talking to Netweed, but I think it's good to bring up. Mostly because of the price. At this price, even if the work is probably more than Metro Prime 1 Remastered, a remake that's not that different from the OG game probably don't merit a high note for them. Yeah, I would say on paper, they've changed more about Mario RPG than they changed for Prime Remastered, because it literally has like new cutscenes, and I mean the visuals are remade. Although Metro Prime Remastered is like a visual remake, but it's still technically a remaster. Metro Prime, but the thing is, Metro Prime Remastered is like one of the best deals out there. Like it is one of the best deals out there, hands down. I will say that this conversation about price point for remakes has come up quite a few times. This conversation came up for Link's Awakening remake, and that was quite the remake. I like what's a better remake, Mario RPG or Link's Awakening? I'm leaning towards Link's Awakening, but I believe Mario RPG is considered a longer game. It's a bigger adventure, and I think that does say something. But man, visually, Link's Awakening, they did some special things with that, and they did add the Dungeon Maker, which offers a lot of extra potential gameplay. And length isn't everything when it comes to games, but they are both $60. They were both $60, and people took issue with Link's Awakening remake then too. Still sold really well. So, despite that, it sold better than Skyward Sword. You usually don't see 2D Zeldas beat 3D Zeldas, but it did. I'm very curious what'll happen for Mario RPG. I heard that the sales are just adequate to start, which doesn't surprise me. But adequate, I gotta look at the numbers. For whatever we've heard, which may be very limited at this point. I bet it's still going to do pretty good. I bet Mario RPG is still going to sell at least 1 million. Maybe a couple. It's a quality Mario title coming out in the holidays, with the Mario movie boosting a lot of Mario stuff right now. I think it has a chance to take it over a couple. Let's see here. All right, I'm trying to scroll through. JT Gamer, I feel sorry for Sony PlayStation fans. $200 just for playing PS5 on the can. I don't really feel like talking smack. I don't have. I don't even have a PS5 right now, so there's only so much I can say. But what's it called? Like the PS5. There was a code name for it. PS5 handheld. I don't know. Whatever it is. What's it called? The Portal? There we go. The Portal. I guessed it right as I Googled it. So. I've seen footage of it, and I just don't like that you can see lag, right? Like, I remember like the Wii U gamepad playing that. Now limited range there, but There was never lag. Like, the potential to see lag if your Wi-Fi connection is just not great, like, that just bothers me. That bothers me. But, if you have a good connection, you like playing your PS5 games on the go, like, it's the best option that's offered at this point. Charles, Metro Prime Remastered is one of the best deals out there. It also has a 94%. Yeah, it has a 94 on Metacritic. It's one of the highest reviewed games of the year. Second highest reviewed Switch game of the year. It is a fantastic deal. Stefan, from what I've seen of Hogwarts Legacy on Switch, it has inconsistent graduations in quality, ugly in many areas, but not bad in others. Yeah, I was very curious because the trailer, I wonder if that's kind of showing the game at its best and there are even worse areas. But from what I've seen of the trailer, it's underwhelming to me. Like, it doesn't get me excited about the game. Just doesn't. Oh, let's see where Brandon's at. Brandon, where you at, buddy? Where are you at? You should be getting here soon. It looks like that hour is the max he was saying. Let's see here. Checking my phone real quick. I'll have to check this later. Okay. Let's. I feel like we've kind of talked about Mario RPG enough, but actually, you know what? Let's put it to a poll. Let's put it to a poll. Where's the YouTube chat? So I can put the poll. All right, here we go. Stop it. Okay. Yes, I want to engage with my audience because I want to create a poll. Let me create the damn poll instead of lagging. I just want to create a poll. What is wrong with you? Okay. Start a poll. All right. So, is Super Mario RPG worth $60? Worth it at $60? And I think it's going to vary from person to person. You know, we all at different points in our lives, from it financially speaking. So obviously that impacts it for people, and if it's just your cup of tea or not. But I'll put this poll up. I haven't beaten the game yet, but I lean. Yeah, I mean, my answer is yes. It's a good game. But yeah, I'll keep that poll up, and we'll just let that go for a little bit. I'll do a little bit more. We're just gonna kind of talk about stuff until Brandon shows up. So I'm firing him for taking so long. He's not actually fired. He's not fired. He's not on payroll either. The Switch 2 debate is not happening yet. We're waiting for Brandon to show up. He should be showing up in a moment. What I wanted to do was just kind of put this up here. Okay. Oscar Valdez. This is a good question. Prime 2 remaster. When? So, I think we actually have good news when it comes to this, and some people may not have realized it yet. It's kind of like a little bit of a bittersweet thing, potentially. Not necessarily, but it is good news for Prime 2 at least. So what I mean is, Jeff Grubb is the person who told us about Metro Prime Remastered. Yes, there was rumors of Prime Trilogy for years, but specifically about the Big Boy Remaster, like that came from Jeff Grubb, and he was spot on that. He thought it would come out holiday last year. It came out early this year, off by a couple months. Not a big deal. So the timing is always harder to guess with these things, but the fact that he knew about it, like that tells us a lot. And recently, when I say recently, I mean like 3-ish, 4 months ago, he told us that something Zelda that's not Tears of the Kingdom related would happen later this year, and that Metro Prime 2 is coming soon. Well, in terms of the Zelda stuff, technically we got that, and that was the news of the Zelda movie. Now, maybe there's something else. We have speculated that maybe Circon Totem meant something more than just the Zelda movie announcement, but also maybe not. So we'll see on that one. But the fact of the matter is, at the very least, what Jeff Grubb said about something not Tears of the Kingdom related happening later this year has already happened. Maybe there's more, but it has already happened. So for those of you that have lost faith in the Jeff Grubb rumor sourcing, like, he's always right, pretty much. There was the one mishap of the Wind Waker Twilight Princess in a direct, but that wasn't even his source. And he's apologized for that. Otherwise, though, Jeff Grubb has been spot on. The only issue has just been, okay, well, the timing. The timing is tricky. And he does his own speculations, so I think sometimes people will listen to his speculations and think, oh, that's for sure. It's not for sure, he's speculating. But from what he's heard, yeah, Prime 2 is coming soon. Now, what is soon exactly? We were hoping it'd be in the September Direct, but based off how things went with the Prime Remaster, how he heard that be coming on the holiday, and it came on the February Direct, maybe we should, be open for it to happen a little bit longer. And given that we just got the Zelda stuff, I think it does strengthen the faith in the Jeff Grubb rumors here. So, that all said, I have no reason to really doubt that Prime 2 is on the way. Like, even outside of rumors, it just makes sense to put the entire Prime trilogy on Switch in the lead up to Prime 4. Totally. So, yeah, Prime 2 totally happening, but the question is when. And I would say, in terms of when, I got two times in mind. One is a surprise Prime 4 teaser at the Game Awards this month, and they shall drop Prime 2. That's one possibility. That's like the ultra hype, optimistic dream world possibility, but I don't think it's out of the question. I would say the more likely option, maybe there's three options really, but another likely option though is that in an early year Nintendo Direct, notice I'm not saying February. I want to keep my options open here, but an early year Nintendo, I'm not going to even call it a Direct. I'm just going to say in an early year presentation, around that time, we will get an announcement for Metro Prime 2. And if Prime 3 doesn't come out alongside of it, Prime 3 will be announced in the summertime. And it'll come out shortly after, if not immediately after. That's what I believe is going to happen with these games. Now, that is my speculation, but, I believe they are coming. I think Prime 4 is coming out probably late next year. And if I'm right on that, then Prime 2 and 3 probably are coming out before then. So, as time goes on, we're running out of opportunities for that to still make sense. So I feel like it's becoming fairly predictable, assuming Prime 4 does come out by the end of the year. So yeah, I'm thinking we get at least Prime 2 by a February, March Direct. Like, that's probable. Yes, I understand we usually get Directs in February, but I'm kind of trying to account for the fact that Switch 2 might throw things out of whack a little bit. So, yeah. Prime 2, I think it's happening. We just gotta be patient. Totally coming. Totally coming. Let's see here. Corona Rig, Andres Research, you should get Botox. He's still adamant the Switch is coming out in 2025. I actually invited him today, but he was, I invited him last minute, so I should have invited him a few days beforehand, but I technically didn't even plan this topic until later, so, yeah, but I'm aware that Bo has a different opinion than mine, but that's cool. That's totally fine. Everyone has opinions. It would have been fun to have a debate. I was actually thinking about having him come on and making him make the argue. Make is a strong word, but I was going to suggest that we debate, but that we debate the opposite sides, where I would debate Switch 2 2025, he would debate Switch 2 2024, just because it would be fun. And then afterwards, we would give our own actual thoughts on what may or may not be happening. Because I think it would have been a healthy way to kind of like just debate things, you know. I think it's cool to consider perspectives for sure. But yeah, I tried reaching out, but I reached out way too late. But at some point, I'm sure Bo will come back on. We're friendly with each other. We're friends, so it'll happen sooner or later. Let's see here. I'm just looking through. Oh, here we go. JT Gamer. I don't think it's coming out until 2026. If you remember, Nintendo said the Switch has a 10-year plan. All right, cool. So here's my counter argument for that. Yes, they have a 10-year plan. And yes, I think the Switch will be out for about 10 years. But I will say the initial report of that 10-year plan was 7 to 10 years. 10 years was and this is more like, this wasn't like, you know, this is kind of like an estimate. A 7 to 10 year lifespan is what they were kind of thinking. But 10 years doesn't mean 10 years as the primary platform. Because if Switch 2 comes out in 2026, I mean, well, that'd be nuts, right? But when Switch 2 comes out next year, as I do believe it comes out, I think Switch is going to be supported for 2 years after that point, which, guess what? Puts it in 2026. Like, that's totally possible. You look at the Nintendo 3DS. The Nintendo 3DS came out at the beginning of 2011, early 2011, and there were still published titles coming out for the 3DS until 2019, early 2019. So for 8 straight years, there were Nintendo published titles coming out, and they still sold systems after that. So it kind of depends on what you define as 10-year plan, because only recently have they announced that they're fully shutting down like the online games for 3DS. So you could argue that even now it was still being supported beyond 10 years. So depending on how you interpret 10 years, there's a lot of wiggle room there. But I'm thinking in terms of primary support of 10 years, like which includes releases of new titles, online support, all that. And the same way how when Switch came out in 2017, Nintendo still supported 3DS until 2019. Where I remember Metroid Samus Returns came out holiday 2017. I was like, this is an amazing game, but why isn't it on Switch? Like, you know, Switch had been out for 6 months already, and there's still amazing games coming out for 3DS still. I think the same is going to happen for Switch. There's going to be amazing games coming out for Switch, but Switch 2 is already going to be out on the market. And it's going to be like that for a couple of years. But I think the majority of the games that are coming out for Switch are going to be remakes and remasters. And because of the ecosystem, the environment's going to be, Switch is going to be backwards compatible. So there aren't going to be exclusives for Switch. It's only going to be exclusive for Switch 2, which I think will work out better than the 3DS to Switch transition. And yeah, Switch will be relevant for at least a couple more years after the Switch launches next year, which would put it into 2026, potentially 2027, which would definitely make good on the 10-year plan. So Nintendo probably doesn't want to wait until the Switch is sputtering with no sales, and then comes out with Switch 2 and has to build that back up. What makes the most sense is to start the transition when Switch is already at the point of no return. It's clear that it's reached its peak and they're at a point where they're supposed to start losing out on sales, but it's been enough time where technology is advanced enough where they can come out with something fresh and exciting that will become something that can sell prominently for years to come. And so, as I stated already, Switch 2, Switch 1 is projected to have a third year of declining sales by a substantial margin. if they wait till 2024, if they go down 20 to 25% in sales, assuming it's just a consistent drop off, right? Instead of like a more of an exponential drop off, which tends to happen. But if they're lucky, they go down by 3 to 4 million every year by 2026. That'd be terrible. So they sell 15 for this current fiscal year. For next fiscal year, let's say they sell 12, and the next one after that, it's less than 10 million. That's not good for Nintendo, because then at that point they have to launch the Switch 2 and start to build up that audience, and it's not going to be immediate. Like they may sell about 15 million the first year, which would be great because that's how much the Switch sold in its first year. But that's not, they want to do better than that. They don't want to be in a position where people are giving up on Switch and moving on. They want to move on when things are still popping. You keep in mind when we talk about like how Nintendo has unified their gaming divisions, they're focused on one platform now. Back in the day, Nintendo could kind of afford to have one system be sputtering to the end because they still had the other one where it was thriving. But this wasn't something Nintendo wanted to happen. It's just what had to happen because they were spreading themselves too thin and they need to prepare for the next generation. What Nintendo does now, though, since they're focusing on one platform, they have a far better consistency of release. They also have more studios and partnerships now, so from that perspective, they're just doing better on top of that. But more intelligently, what they do now is that they have a lot of remakes and remasters that aren't being made by their primary development teams. They really help to fill up the lineup for those last few years as they start to divert resources to their next-gen projects. And what they're going to do is that they're going to introduce Switch 2 while Switch is still doing relatively well, support Switch for a few years to come, and as that slowly declines, Switch 2 will slowly rise up, and once Switch is totally done, Switch 2 will be thriving and will be ready to take up the bulk of Nintendo's focus moving forward for years to come. So yeah, that's why I disagree. But I do agree that Switch will be supported until at least 2026. And here we are, waiting for Brandon to not show up. I should just debate with myself. That'll be it. That'll be good. Oscar Valdez. Sorry, more Metroid stuff. Don't apologize for more Metroid stuff. Metroid's the GOAT. Well, that and Zelda. Samus Returns to the Switch. Really holding out hope for that one, but I doubt it. Yeah, I don't have any like force or rumor or anything that's giving me like reason that Samus Returns is right around the corner for Switch. I think it's something that would be lovely to happen. But I right now I just kind of feel like that they're definitely working on another 2D Metroid game. I feel pretty confident in saying that. There is a rumor for that. But it just makes sense. Metroid Dread sold really well. I mean, even after Samus Returns, which comparatively did not sell that well, they still went ahead and made Metroid Dread. And Sakamoto suggested they have other plans. We know Mercury Steam's working on something. I feel like Nintendo has found their dedicated 2D Metroid developer. Metroid Dread's their most popular, best-selling game ever for that studio. So, like, I see no reason why they're not going to continue. The question is, are they going to remake another game, or are they going to offer up another 2D Metroid, a new one? I'm for either, but I do feel, I don't know. I mean, I feel like a 2D Metroid title could very easily be another cross-gen thing. Like, they could get it running well on Switch, but they could probably have a nicer version for Switch 2 very easily. That makes sense. It would be kind of poetic if Samus Returns came out for 3DS, but the good news is that this new Metroid game would be available for both because of the backwards compatibility, at least. But anyways, for Samus Returns, I don't want to say it'll never get brought over, but I feel like, with Metroid Prime 4 likely being around the corner, Prime 2 and 3 coming fairly soon, and with what Mercury Steam is likely working on right now, it that not being a remaster of Samus Returns, I feel like we have a few years before we're at a point where like, hey, we need something, to be brought over. I mean, the other thing to consider is Samus Returns is already a remake, and I'm not saying Nintendo wouldn't, but they tend to not revisit remaster remakes so quickly soon after. We may have to wait a little while, maybe about 10 years or so. So, yes, I would love to see Samus Returns. Me being honest, I would say currently, I'm sure I've suggested otherwise in the past, but just kind of me thinking about all the different Metroid stuff that are on the horizon. I feel like it would definitely be something on the back end. Now, I don't know. It really just depends on the timeline, though, because maybe they do port over Samus Returns before the next 2D Metroid. Maybe that's something that's remastered by, say, maybe, for example, Grezzo. I think Grezzo would do a great job of that. I mean, the game's already there. It's already good. So I would like it. We'll see what they actually do. But I wouldn't hold out a lot of hope for it soon. But also, I will say that in the last couple of years of Switch, I think there's going to be a lot of remakes and remasters. So there's a lot of old games that Nintendo can potentially put work into. So, take a pick for a few popular old Nintendo games. Some of them are happening. But we've already gotten a couple, like Thousand Year Door and Mario RPG. Those are not the last. Problem with Samus Returns is that it's not that old. That's the big issue here for me. But could we see maybe a remake for Metroid Fusion, for example? That feels possible. Or Zero Mission. That feels possible. I would even be down. I know some people will hate me for saying this, but I would even be down for a remake of Metroid Other M. But you take that opportunity to, I guess the problem with Other M is that they would have to retool some things. I think they could easily fix the gameplay just by putting it with a Pro Controller. They would have to tweak the Where's Waldo moments. But I think that could, if you just change the camera perspective to a button press, that would change things a lot. And the story stuff is where I think some people are always going to have to take some issue with it. I don't know how you tweak that. That may be why they don't do it. But from a gameplay perspective, the game could easily be remastered and be made amazing. Because gameplay, there's a lot of really good gameplay in Other M. There are just some awkward choices they made that, if kind of remedied through some quality of life choices, they changes, it would be a lot better. Nebudo9. I'll say it now, randomly somewhat. Even if Prime 4's final boss turns out to be Dark Samus somehow again, I won't be disappointed, as how good will that look. But yeah, 99.9% it won't be Dark Samus. Yeah, I don't think it'll be Dark Samus. I think it'll be Sylix, a new space pirate. Maybe Ridley will take on more of a final boss, because Ridley's rarely the final. I'm not saying he's never the final boss, but Ridley's rarely the actual final boss. He's usually like the penultimate. It would be interesting if they were to kind of give some character development for Ridley, because Ridley's actually an intelligent creature. The way they depict Ridley, oftentimes Ridley's like sort of just seems like a wild beast. And I love that energy that he has about him, but there is an intelligence there. So if they could find a way to depict both things, that might make him even cooler and more intimidating. Like that could be very exciting. So I would love to see Ridley maybe be raised another level. But you also have Sylix, and if it's called Metroid Prime, it does come with the likely implication that there will be a new Prime Metroid, a new superpower Metroid that could become a monster in its own right, and that could become intimidating, and maybe does take on the form of something like Dark Samus down the road, as did the initial Metroid Prime. So, totally possible. Let's see here. Ellis 335. Andres, do you know if Nate is feeling 100% better yet? I haven't asked him the last couple of days, but I mean, he's live streaming now. He's making videos every day now. He's on camera now. So, to my understanding, he's feeling better. I'm sure there's still some recovering things, but he's made a significant improvements. He's back to working normally pretty much now. JT Gamer. All I want now for my Switch is a 2 Zelda HDs. Which one? Oh, the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess? Yeah. Zalado. It will be Dark Samus riding Ridley. There you go. The double whammy. And then they fuse into a giant, disgusting monster. Yeah, that's getting a little Resident Evil, maybe. All right, moving on here. JM on Other M, I just hate the Wii controls and never finished the game. Well, that's what I'm saying. Other M, like they could redo the controls, and it would make the game a lot better. The story is a whole other discussion, but at least from a gameplay perspective, they could make some substantial improvements there. And visually, the game could look incredible. It was one of the best looking Wii games. So I would love to see it. So where's Brandon? It's definitely well over an hour. Where he at? I've stalled way longer than intended. Hope he didn't choke on the cheeseburger from Wendy's. Oh. Okay, we got a super chat here from Sammy. Talks about games. Sam, I feel like the Switch 2 is going to launch somewhat close to what Ocarina of Time remake that's been rumored in order to take advantage of higher horsepower. Well, first off, thank you for the super chat. I'm kind of just trying to process what you're saying here. Let me reread. I feel like Switch 2 is going to launch somewhat close to that Ocarina of Time remake that's been rumored in order to take advantage of higher horsepower. So I think, when it comes to speculation, first off, I mean that's what this is, right? Ocarina of Time remake is speculation, right? Or as you say, rumor. It is rumored, but I don't know how much I value there's a lot of nuance to this one. I'm not saying it's not happening. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just simply stating that we shouldn't make the assumption that it is happening. Even though I love to talk about it, and I definitely think it's a strong possibility. But I guess what I'm trying to get at here is when talking about this, part of me doesn't want to be like, oh, it's a Switch exclusive, a Switch 2 exclusive, because I feel like when I say that, I'm kind of like saying, oh, well, you can't get it if you don't buy a Switch 2. And so I almost feel bad for the people who aren't going to buy a Switch 2 immediately. But at the same time, I do think Switch 2 is coming out next year. And I do believe there will be exclusives. Nintendo's going to need that to help the system sell. And so, what makes sense? And when I consider one of the main reasons why I believe a Zelda remake is on the table, it's because Nintendo needs some sort of substantial Zelda release early on into Switch 2 to get the Zelda fan base on there, to push some hardware. I've talked about it many a times already, how we look at how in the past Nintendo has put out a late generation Zelda, but has another Zelda release ready within the first 2 years, usually the first year and a half, if not even sooner. I could bring up the examples again, but Majora's Mask ended in 64. Wind Waker came out 2002, GameCube released 2001. Like, it came out pretty soon into the GameCube's life cycle. Well, that one's kind of the latest, because I think I said 2002, but I think that's a little off. I think it came out December 2002 in Japan. That's why I said, yeah, okay, that is correct. So yeah, the answer, I mean, it game came out November 2001, so yeah, 13 months later. And if you count America, what, 14, 15 months later? So yes, less than a year and a half. Spirit Tracks came at the end of the DS era, and then Ocarina of Time 3D came out within the first few, like that first year of 3DS, right? So DS, Spirit Tracks ended, and then 3DS, Ocarina of Time 3D came out early on. And then we got Skyward Sword, and then the first year, Wind Waker HD on Wii U. And then you look at other years, right, where we had Twilight Princess cross-gen, we had Breath of the Wild cross-gen. So if a Zelda's not closing out a generation, you have a cross-gen. And that's kind of what they usually do. It's one or the other. And so in this case, given that Tears of the Kingdom came out this year, they're well positioned to have some type of Zelda effort early on that showcases the system. And I don't think it's just going to be a new 2D Zelda. No, I'm not saying that can't happen. I think that can happen. But I think that you're going to want something that's going to be a system pusher. And what system pushers are usually 3D Zelda games. So that brings us into the Zelda remake conversation. Because you can get that done without it requiring the use of the main Zelda team, and it can help bridge the gap before the next new Zelda title, which will be years from now. So with that all in mind, it makes sense to think that Ocarina of Time 3 remake, if that is what Nintendo's doing, or whatever this Zelda game they decide to remake, probably would be a switch to exclusive. Because a big part of the reason why they would do that it's because they want something major Zelda early on onto the next system to showcase the system and get Zelda fans to buy the system because 3D Zelda is a system seller. So that's kind of, I do kind of agree on that. Hold on. Brandon's not going to make it. Okay, so I guess it's not really a podcast anymore. It's I'll have to retitle, I guess. Brandon can't make it, so oh well. Not much of a Switch 2 debate then. We've talked about some of the points though, so it's not like there hasn't been any sort of relevancy to the topic. But Brandon maybe clickbait. He's got stuff going on. It's okay. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm inclined to agree, Samuel. Ocarina of Time remake, if it's true, I feel like it'd be a Switch 2 exclusive. But it depends. It's not guaranteed. Because it is something that I think a lot of people on Switch would really want to buy. And I just kind of think about how Nintendo had that Metroid Prime remaster. Like, I think they could get Ocarina of Time looking amazing on just Switch. They totally could. And there are some quality remakes we are seeing already, like Paper Mario 1,000 Year Door. So, you know, like Paper Mario 1,000 Year Door, I wouldn't say is necessarily any more ambitious than what an Ocarina of Time remake would be. They could be comparable. So, you know, maybe Ocarina of Time remake would be a little bit more ambitious, but it wouldn't be. I wouldn't think it'd be significantly more, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. 1,000 Years is a big game. It's not like giant open worlds, but I mean, Ocarina of Time is also not giant open worlds. It's just kind of biggish areas. All right. JT Gamer, you're going to feel sorry for me. I just got my Switch. Well, The good news is that the Switch will still be relevant for years to come. I still think there's a lot of games coming to Switch, and you could always trade it in if you so choose, and you get a discount on the Switch too. So you'll be fine. I wouldn't say tell people who are on the fence about getting a Switch to not get a Switch. I would say, yeah, get a Switch. Get a Switch. You may not want to buy a Switch 2 immediately anyway. If you wait this long to get Switch, you probably wouldn't be ready for a Switch 2 yet. There's a lot of games to play on Switch, and you could just always trade it in. You wouldn't, yeah, I guess you're losing out on some money, but you're paying something to play Switch games now as opposed to a year from now. So I would say it's fine. Yeah. Anyway, I didn't really get. I guess I wanted to do a debate today, so it's not really much of a debate anymore. It's not. It's not a debate. I'm gonna retile the cast. Yeah. It's no longer a podcast. It's a Q&A. I wish I knew sooner, but it's fine. All right. It's been rebranded to Q&A. Not the thumbnail though. Gotta fix the thumbnail. I can fix that later. Actually, I can fix it now. Q&A. I got some words to say though. I'm gonna put some thought. I'll edit this after the live show. I shouldn't be doing that. That's my ADHD brain doing different things at different times when I shouldn't be. Anyway, so let me try and think of reasons why Switch 2 might not come out in 2024. So I would say I'm trying to consider perspective of someone who thinks that Switch 2 won't come out next year. Nintendo hasn't announced anything yet. And you look at prior generations, they tend to announce a system ahead of time. They haven't really told us anything. So you got that. And then sales are still going strong. They haven't died. Oftentimes when Nintendo comes out with a new system, it's because their current system is dead. At least with the home consoles. So we're not there yet either. That's kind of all I have. I feel like there's more. There's definitely more, which is it's why it would have been more fun to have someone, come on and kind of do like a debate, right? But yeah, I mean, I think those are points, and I'm going to counter them, right? So the point about sales still going relatively well, yes, they're going well. This is incredible sales for how late we are into Switch generation. But the fact remains that this is the third, Nintendo's projecting their third decline in a row, and they have not changed their projections despite the surprisingly strong sales of the Mario Bros. Movie and Tears of the Kingdom. Nintendo acknowledges during their financials they increased their software forecast by 5 million, but they kept their hardware the same because they've told us that they're expecting it's going to be a real struggle to hit the 15 million. There is a market saturation there. So fact of the matter is, while Switch may be having a very strong 7th year, it's the 7th year and it is declining. Consoles don't last this long for a reason. So that alone, I think, kind of nips that point in the bud. But another point that I just made is that typically, at least for the home consoles, Nintendo waits until the system's totally dead, and then they move on to the next system. But this is not what Nintendo wants to do. We have Nintendo interviews where they talked about in the past they struggle with transitions, and this time they're trying to be very cautious to not go through that with that, right? Now Nintendo has their Nintendo accounts, and then multiple times they talked about how they want to have that history translate over, potentially downloads as well, and just information and accounts. They want to have more of a seamless transition. And as I discussed earlier in the show, in the past, Nintendo was focusing on two different platforms. They were spreading themselves a bit thin. They kind of had to pick one over the other after a certain point, so they can prepare for the next generation for the other respective platform. So now that they're focusing on one, they're not spread as thin, and they have a better development structure now. They have more partners now. So that's just not happening. In the past, Nintendo would go through droughts on both systems all the time. Now the droughts don't exist anymore. That is no longer a thing. Nintendo's just maintaining consistent momentum. There's going to be quality releases no matter what. They may not all be full AAA efforts, but there's always going to be something. So this expectation that some may have that the Switch needs to get to a point where it's not selling anymore, where it's going to be abysmal sales, for that to be the true marker of Switch 2 being around the corner, that's the wrong sign, because Nintendo's not going to let that happen. That said, as I'm thinking about it more, here is a potential counter argument for Switch 2 in 2024. We haven't seen a price drop yet. I think that is a valid point. And Nintendo has told us that they aren't planning any price drops recently. Now, that can change for the next fiscal year, easily. And I'm going to venture to guess that the Switch won't drop in price until Nintendo announces the Switch 2. So that's kind of what I think is going to happen here. And something interesting about the Switch in comparison to all other prior Nintendo systems, because all of the prior Nintendo systems had multiple price drops throughout the generations, right? Or at least one. The Switch hasn't had any. Not any. We've never seen that before. The Switch has maintained significant value this entire long generation, which just speaks volumes for just how successful and amazing the Switch is, and how strong the Nintendo brand is right now. So for those saying Nintendo, like, that's just Nintendo IP, Nintendo brand right now is stronger than it ever has been. So that's not really a concern. But main point that I'm thinking here is that I wouldn't say the lack of a price drop announcement says Switch 2 is not coming out next year. I mean, maybe it does suggest that Switch 2 is not coming out this holiday, but that's obvious at this point. This week is Black Friday, right? Like, it's not happening this year. That's guaranteed. So that's just the way it is. But next year, I expect Switch will have a price drop, and I think it's going to make a lot of sense. I think it's going to make a lot of sense because I do expect Switch to be supported for years to come as the secondary system, as a cheaper system. So with a price drop, they can still get people playing that, and they'll still be putting out some remakes and remasters, and it's going to be a good source of income for them as they start to build up the Switch 2. But early on, the Switch 2 it's not going to have games that are going to sell 20 million in 6 months. It's just not going to have the amount of people owning the system yet. That's going to be built up over years. It's going to take until the 4th or 5th year before the Switch 2 is going to have games that are going to sell 20 million in 6 months like it does now. So Nintendo's going to do what they can to push the Switch as much as they can, but they also need to be transitioning over at the same time. So that's kind of what I think on that, right? Like, just from a financial perspective, business perspective, it makes sense. But then you look at Switch 2, or rather, you look at Switch games now, right? Mario Wonder, Tears of the Kingdom, Pikmin 4, I believe WarioWare as well. These are new Nintendo titles that have come out this year, and they don't have DLC. You look at all prior years, most new Nintendo titles have DLC. Why is that? Are there no DLC plans? Well, in the case of Tears of the Kingdom, there are no current DLC plans. But I think that there could still be DLC, but they may be saving it for a next system. That's possible, but really, what I think it suggests is they're not sticking around with developing those games because they're focusing on the next project already. They're moving on to the next platform. I think the lack of DLC is indicative of that. You also talk about how you see the kind of like all the YouTube videos that all the Nintendo Directs that have come out on YouTube. The titles say Dash Nintendo Switch. That's a this year thing that was never the case in all prior years. So why would they do that? Probably because they want to position the branding there. I think there's some SEO implications, but also there may be some Switch 2 Directs coming in the not so distant future. I'm not saying this year, but they may be kind of positioning the branding there. So that's something to consider. I'm not even talking about rumors, right? Like there are the rumors, or the Gamescom reports from Eurogamer, Video Games Chronicle that's coming next year. We have other sources like Nate the Hate, for example, as well. Those are all credible places. You don't really have any leakers saying, "Oh, it's coming out 2025 or beyond." You just don't have that. Of course, I should say that leakers get things wrong. Plans can change. There's always possibility of delay. And timing is always tricky. We talked about earlier with Metroid Prime Remastered. Jeff Grubb was sure it would come out for the anniversary of Metroid Prime. We believe it was the 20th anniversary for the holiday. Did not happen. He had to shave his head. He put a bet on it. And it was announced shortly after he shaved his head. Came out, Shadow dropped February of this year. So, you always got to take these things with a grain of salt. But that all said, you account for the rumors. You account for the signs from Nintendo with the lack of DLC, with all these remakes and remasters that are coming out now. 80% of the unknown games for next year are remakes and remasters. That is a staggering ratio that we've never seen before. All these, I think, are signs that they're getting ready. You literally go to Nintendo's financial Q&A. We talked about it last week, but literally they talk about how they do not expect to be able to increase Switch sales. That they don't see how that can happen. You don't tell that to investors and not have some sort of plan beyond that for next year. You're not like, yeah, well, Switch sales aren't going up, and there's nothing we can do. Like you don't do that. Like, it's because they're getting ready to move on. Like, they wouldn't. That's just the way it is, right? Like, Nintendo in the past, Nintendo has maybe struggled and done everything they can to increase sales. Like they'll drop the price of systems dramatically or do all these little things. The Switch is maintaining sales at its price, and I think it supports the notion that the Switch is going to be in it for the long haul, but it doesn't change the fact that they still need to come out with Switch 2 at the same time. They're going to do both. So that's what I think is happening. I really would have loved it if another person was here today, but that's okay. I did what I could. I apologize for leading you guys to believe there would be a debate. I thought there would be a debate, so sorry. Maybe we'll actually have a debate at some point, and maybe I'll put together a group of people. Actually, that might be a fun idea. Maybe I'll put together like an actual panel, and it's just going to be a debate, and I'll do it live so I could put up like the poll so people can be voting back and forth. And I'll maybe have like me and maybe at least two other people. Maybe I could moderate, or maybe it's like a 2v2. A 2v2 might be kind of fun. And then the poll could just we could see where the numbers go. That I might do, actually. I'm going to turn this disappointment in the, I guess, ruined planned topic for tonight's podcast, and I'll turn it into something fun as its own independent show, which could be pretty cool. So, yeah, that I think that'll be a good idea. All right, so I'm gonna finish up the show soon, but I'll check in with the chat here. We'll do a little bit of closing Q&A again, and yeah. Oh, I will say, I may be on a show soon, and I'll announce it later. But pretty cool show. Some of you may have heard of it. Haven't been on there before yet. So I'm kind of excited to be on it. It'll be fun. Not gonna say what, but you'll know. I'll let you know when it happens. All right. Ellis 335. Andres, do they still have the initial Nintendo Switch October reveal trailer privated? Yeah, pretty sure. I could double check, but I think that thing's just gone. It's been eliminated from the world. Nintendo Switch first look. What the hell? Yeah. It's gone. Gone. Still gone. It's staying gone. I don't know if it's ever going to come back. Johnny Hernandez, rumor, a new Nintendo Switch report could be bad news for DLSS support. Really? Where's this rumor coming from? Switch 2 report. No DLSS, which makes no sense. Oh, I see. Okay, I googled it. Oh, this is a new thing. Ooh, okay. This news. This news. This is the opposite of I don't know, I gotta read it. This might be tomorrow's video, and then someone's gonna be mad at me for talking about Switch 2 back-to-back days. But if news comes out, I'm gonna talk about the news. So that's just what it is. I got a board that I'm not gonna show you because those are my ideas, right? Like I have a whole list of things that I want to talk about eventually. I don't have a lack of ideas. Sometimes I might have a lack of time in order to execute the ideas, but there's tons of ideas, and I'm excited to get to them. And I plan on getting to them before the end of the year. But when news comes out, I'm going to prioritize that. So I wonder if this is actually newsworthy, though. All right, so rumor. New Nintendo Switch report could be bad news for DLSS support. A known insider shares some bad news for Nintendo Switch fans, hoping that Switch 2 will deliver a significant generational graphics upgrade with the DLSS. Okay. Nintendo Switch 6 are tentatively dubbed the Switch 2 might not offer efficient support for NVIDIA's deep learning super sampling technology, a well-known industry insider has said. This claim casts some doubt on a number of past reports suggesting the Switch 2 could offer significant generational graphics upgrade thanks to DLSS. This is interesting because we have a lot of other industry insiders saying that it will. So who is this insider? So I'll just continue reading this article. History of Switch rumors pointing to DLSS support is largely rooted in the widespread and somewhat substantiated belief that the upcoming console will use a system on chip based on NVIDIA's T234 SoC. Specifically, the silicon powered Switch 2 is believed to be the NVIDIA TU239, whose existence was previously confirmed by an update to one of the GPU maker's open source kernels. Since the T234 comes equipped with a deep learning accelerator, a piece of specialized hardware dedicated to handling various AI computations. The expectation was that the T239 would offer such a unit as well. Yet Eurogamer technology editor Richard Ledbetter now reports that the T239 won't have a DLA, having said as much during the November 20 episode of the Digital Foundry Direct podcast. The episode saw the Digital Foundry cast field a question about the chances of the Switch being a powerful traditional home console instead of a hybrid device similar to its predecessor. While everyone agreed that the scenario is unlikely, Ledbetter elaborated on that point by stating multiple sources he recently consulted claim the next Nintendo console won't have a DLA-equipped chip. Okay. That omission would significantly inhibit the console's ability to make use of modern graphics technologies like DLSS, which tend to rely on artificial intelligence. It still wouldn't make such solutions impossible, as underlined by the widespread reports that Nintendo showcased Switch running Breath of the Wild at 60 FPS and 4K behind closed doors at Gamescom 2023, largely thanks to DLSS support. However, by omitting a specialized unit dedicated to AI calculations from its next console, the company would make technology like DLSS much more computationally expensive, Ledbetter said. All right, so I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm going to say that I'm gonna look into this a little bit more. But I think what needs to be understood, at least from that, I gotta listen to it, and see the whole perspective here. But first off, we already had like the information we had that leads us to believe the Switch is going to be a big jump, comes from credible places, just as credible, if not more so, than this person. So, and I'm not saying what they're saying isn't true, but both things can be true. Nintendo could be coming with their own form of DLSS. They may not include every single little thing that we have come to expect from other versions of NVIDIA SoCs. This is going to be its own unique SoC, so it may handle things a bit differently. And so we should take that into consideration. And so we hear about things like the Switch 2 having DLSS 3.5 and being able to handle ray tracing that surpasses the Matrix tech demo of Unreal Engine 5, the PS5 version, and the ray tracing we saw there. The ray tracing aspect of it, like, that's extremely impressive. I wouldn't say this is much. I wouldn't be too concerned about this yet, because I think we need to have the full picture. It could simply be a hint towards that. Yeah, this is a very customized chipset that's not using everything we've come to understand about prior NVIDIA SoCs. Which, yeah, I mean, this is Nintendo's Switch 2. This is something, they use a stock Tegra X1 for the Switch, basically, with minor modifications. This is something that they've been working on for a while, and it's going to be specialized. So I'm not going to pretend to be an extreme expert on this stuff, but I would say that we need more information before drawing some significant conclusions about what it's going to do. But at the same time, let's not fool ourselves into thinking that the Switch 2 is going to be more powerful than the PS5. It's not going to be. It's a handheld system. That's not going to happen. But is it going to be a something that bridges the gap between it and current gen consoles more so than what Switch did? I think so. And I think that's going to lead to something very healthy, and it's going to be a very nice jump over what Switch currently is. So I still will maintain everything that we've sort of speculated and talked about. But, I'll look more into this, and maybe there'll be a video on it tomorrow. We'll see. Kind of depends on the extra details that I kind of extrapolate from reading more of this and actually listening to the podcast, getting the context of everything. But still, well, it's news. It's interesting. We're going to talk more about it tomorrow, probably. And that we don't know. Actually, the report is DLSS might not be as powerful as it sounds, not that it won't have it at all. And that is important to note. That is, from what I briefly read there, that seemed to be the case. Yeah. So, it just depends, right? So, like, they were making the argument in the article that if it doesn't have, what were they saying? What was it, the DIA or DLA aspect to it, something that helps it with the AI calculations, that it could be more computationally expensive. This is a specialized chip that may have its own, solutions to some of these problems that we don't know or understand. So I'm gonna do more research on this tomorrow. I'm gonna actually listen to the source on it tonight or tomorrow morning, and then we'll have a more dedicated discussion on this tomorrow. But thank you for pointing that out, Johnny Hernandez. It is news, and it's interesting. Anyways, I think we've reached the end of tonight's discussion. Thank you, everyone, for coming by. We'll talk about this new bit of Switch 2 news tomorrow, probably. I got other planned. I actually have a Xenoblade video planned, a Pokemon video planned, several Zelda videos planned, several Mario videos planned, a couple of Metroid videos planned. There's stuff. I got stuff in the works, but I prioritize news first, and those videos will come out after when I get the chance to make them. And I do like this idea of putting together a panel to do an actual Switch 2 debate. That might be very interesting. But yes, that's all for now, everyone. If you could like the stream, it'd be very much appreciated. And I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.